Welcome back to my miter saw station build. This is the third and final video, starting here by cross-cutting the plywood that will later become the drawer boxes. If you stay tuned to the very end of the video, I do go over some of the mistakes I made during this build and also some of the future improvement ideas. After rough cutting all the drawer pieces to size, I then am taking it to the table saw to rip the height of all the drawers. And as you can see, I'm progressing sheet by sheet, drawer bank by drawer bank, since I have common sizes, 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, I think, and then 14 inches. So I'm just progressing my way through here, first cutting 4s and then 6-inch drawers. And trying to keep them as organized as possible by laying them out on the my multiple workbenches. Once I get them all ripped to height, I'm now cross-cutting what would be the drawer sides to their length. This would be in the depth into the cabinet. All right, the plan for today is all about drawers. Yesterday afternoon, I spent the time cutting out all the drawer pieces, so ripping them all to the final height, and then I cross-cut all the sides down to their exact drawer depth that I wanted. And you see, I have them all laid out here, trying to keep everything organized so I don't get things mixed up. So you have the far right bank, front and back, the sides for the far right bank, the 2 middle banks, and then the far left bank over here. And then just off screen or off camera here is the stuff for the upper drawers. It's all 1/2-inch plywood for the sides and the backs. Couple things on drawer construction. I've marked the bottoms of all these with the drawer location, whether it's a side or a back, and then an arrow pointing towards the inside, or where the groove for the bottom panel is going to go. Speaking of bottom panels, these small drawers in the center banks will get a 1/4-inch bottom, and then the larger drawers on the left and right bank will be getting 1/2-inch bottoms, just due to their size, their width. I want that extra support on the bottom so I don't have anything break through. And then the top drawers will just be 1/4-inch bottoms as well, just because they're not quite as long and won't carry as much heavy things in them. The drawer construction is going to be a rabbet joint. It will be reinforced. I haven't determined I usually reinforce them with dowels. So once the glue starts to set up and the clamps are on it, I can usually pop a clamp off, drill a couple holes, and pound some dowels in. With the number of drawers that I have to do, I may try screws. I'm probably going to do a little test piece here and see if I can drive a screw in there and keep it centered in a 1/2-inch drawer, in the 1/2-inch drawer front, and without blowing out the material. So I'm going to try that out. If I can do that, that's great, because that means I don't have to actually keep clamps on them for the full hour and a half till the glue sets up. I can just clamp them together, screw it all together, take the clamps back off, move on to the next drawer. So if that works, that's great. If not, it'd just be a little bit slower process of gluing all the drawer pieces together. Plan for today is to cut the grooves for the bottom, cut the rabbets in the side pieces, and then get dry fit a couple of them and get dimensions for bottoms, which I roughly already know, but I want to get the exact dimensions from the pieces after they're constructed. One thing I forgot to mention, why I use the reinforced rabbet, it makes it really simple to dial in the width of your drawer. A lot of other methods require the drawer to be cut to its final length and then do joinery, like lock miters or box joints or whatever else, dovetails even for that matter. I really like the simplicity of the rabbet, just because you can cut your joinery first, And then the front and back pieces you can then cut afterwards to get the exact overall width you want, so it matches your drawer opening, minus your drawer slides, whatever you're using there. So that makes it really nice when you're using the side mount type drawer slides. I guess if you're using bottom mount, it doesn't really matter as much. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Starting by cutting grooves in the bottoms for the 1/4 inch plywood, and then I'll move on to the 1/2 inch plywood, and then the rabbets. Just a quick detailed shot here of the rabbet. The side with the black piece would be the sides of the drawers, and then the piece on the bottom would be the front and back. Here's my test with screws. Come to find out they do hold pretty well in 1/2 inch material, so I'm going to use that for my construction. First step, get my marks lined up, the marks I made earlier with the arrows. Make sure that's going down, and then I'm cutting my 1/4 inch grooves in these drawers. Slow process on a router table, but the results are very clean. Moving on to cutting the rabbets, I've already cut the 1/2 inch grooves for the bottom. The rabbets here, you can see I have a square piece of wood as my backer material, which keeps the drawer side square to the fence and allows me to push that through. I also found that if I would kind of sand in process here some of these grooves and rabbets, it just helped my sanity, I suppose, by not having to sand everything all at once. So I'm doing some rough sanding here just to knock down all the fuzz and burrs and little chip out pieces. Once I have the joinery cut, the rabbets cut, I now can get the exact size I need for the drawer fronts and backs. On this first cut, I'm really taking my time, make sure I get that perfectly dialed into the width I need, which I wish I would have probably taken more time on some of the future drawers where I messed that dimension up. Here's how I dry fit the drawers. These little woodpecker corner clamps work fantastic for this. This allows me to mock everything up and get the exact dimensions I need for the drawer bottoms. From there, I'll cut the drawer bottoms to size, and then I will start assembling the cabinet, or the drawers, which you can see here. The 1/2 inch bottoms fit very tightly in the grooves I cut, so the drawer boxes were very easy to put together. I apply a little bit of clamping pressure, make sure it's pretty square to start off here, and then I start driving drilling the holes and driving screws in to hold everything in place. After the screws are driven into the sides, I will flip the box over onto its top eventually here. I'll check for square one last time and make any small adjustments I need at this point in time with the clamp, and then I'll drive the screws in the very back, keeping that drawer box square. And then move on to the next one. At this point in time, I've gotten the bulk of the major construction done of the miter saw station. I was able to finish up the drawer construction recently, and I'll show you the joints, how they ended up. So here is the rabbets. They're glued and then reinforced with screws. You can see on this side, a couple banks of my drawers were a little wide, so I had to take about a 30-second off on the router table to clear a spot for the drawer slides, so there's a nice tight fit there. The bottoms are not housed in the very back of the drawer. The backs are cut short, and then the bottoms are put in. Everything can be squared up, and then you can screw in along this back piece here to keep everything square while the glue dries. So it's a good feeling it's a big milestone to get all those drawers done. That was a lot of work, a lot of parts. So I'll save you a lot of the footage, but here I am sanding the upper part of the cabinet. I will continue to sand the entire cabinet throughout the process here. After I do some of the sanding, I do come back and vacuum the dust up, give it a quick wipe down, and then I'll move on to applying some shellac. I like to apply a little bit of shellac to the front faces and some of the exposed surfaces of the birch plywood and oak. Since I'm using a water-based polyurethane, it doesn't provide much warmth or much grain definition. So applying that little bit of shellac helps kind of make all that stand out a little more and warms up the wood tone. Here's some new panels I made for the front. You can see the little pockets in there are for the hold down clamp for the saw. Finishing process for the shelves: sand, wet with water, sand again. These will eventually get sprayed down the road. For finishing the cabinet itself, I'm using water-based polyurethane, brush and a roller. The brush, of course, is getting into all the tight spots and corners, and the roller works well for the large flat surfaces. Here I am rolling the exterior side of the cabinet, and then I move on to the interior of the boxes. Start by brushing all the corners, and then get the roller out and roll all the flat edges, all the flat surfaces, excuse me, and kind of blend in where the brush marks were. Now we're moving on to the drawer and adjustable shelf finishing process. The way I did this is probably a little different than I usually do it. I'm actually sanding at the same time I'm spraying finish, which is kind of odd, but it allowed me to kind of keep moving and not have to wait hours for finish to dry for everything. I was able to spray some finish on either an adjustable shelf or a drawer, come back, do some sanding on a different drawer, wet it down, let it dry, sand it again, spray some more finish on something else, and just kind of keep this loop rolling for basically an entire weekend, I think. This also helps. I didn't have to then store all the drawers like in a drying rack or on a bunch of painter's pyramids. By the time I was done sanding the next drawer, that one was dry enough to set it down. Here I'm also finishing and sanding the bottom part of the cabinet. Very similar to the top. Just sand it down, vacuum it. I coat it with shellac and then polyurethane. And so, as you can see here, once I wetted it down with water, it had enough time to dry, so I sand that down. I then move it onto the next stage. And here at the very end, I'm sanding the first coat of polyurethane with 320 grit sandpaper. I, of course, wipe that down, and then it's going to get a second coat. The adjustable shelves and the drawers all got 2 coats of the polyurethane on them, as well as the cabinets. They got sanded in between coats and got a second coat. I've moved on to working on the drawer fronts. All the drawers have been finished, been installed. It's now time to put the faces on them. So couple things here, a couple things to note. When making the false fronts, I'm making them out of plywood, and then I'm wrapping them in a hardwood edging, the same edging that I put on all the cabinets. It's a 3/4 inch screen molding that's for the drawer fronts. It's been ripped down to a 1/2 inch to accommodate the 1/2 inch plywood. So since my drawer spacing is so tight, it doesn't leave a lot of room for error here. I can't make them too short, else then the actual drawer will show. And I can't make them too tall, else then it'll interfere with pulling out the drawers. They'll rub or bump against each other. So what I've been doing is taking the measurement of the actual drawer. I know that the thickness of the screen molding, two pieces of the screen molding together is 7/16 of an inch, just a little over that. So what I've been doing is I've been saying, all right, let's take my drawer size. I know I want the drawer front to extend past the top and bottom just a very small amount, so I said a 32nd of an inch. So that would be a 1/16 with the top and the bottom. Then I know my screen molding is 7/16 of an inch, so I'm going to take my drawer front, I'm going to add 1/16, and then I'm going to subtract 7/16. So what I've been doing is that's subtracting 3/8 total. So drawer size minus 3/8 of an inch is what I ripped the piece of plywood to. I've already cut all of them to the same length with track saw, so they'll all be uniform length. I just am now ripping them to the height. And how I started this out is I have a ledger board here, which is hard to see on the camera, but it's screwed to the bottom of the cabinet to hold this first drawer front in place. And then as I worked my way up, I used the drawer front below it as my reference point. Now I'm using shims. I've got some washers here. I've also got some playing cards that I can use to get the right overhang of the drawer fronts and make sure that nothing's going to interfere, anything like that. I've also been pre-drilling where the hardware is going to go for the pulls. I'm using those pre-drilled holes to temporarily mount the drawer front to the drawer. So you can see I got 4 screws here holding this on. That's exactly where the 2 handles are going to go for the pulls. Once I get all the drawer fronts built and put in place in the way I like, I'll then start the finishing process. So dismount them all, sand, finish, put them all back on, screw them into place, and then add the pulls for the hardware. Another piece of information. When cutting this oak screen molding, it's likely to either chip out or blow out or sometimes shoot across the room as a little piece breaks off. So what I found really helps is a zero clearance sacrificial fence attached to the miter saw. That really just helps keep the piece controlled, stable, not going to blow out on you. So after that first drawer front, this really came in handy, is making this sacrificial fence here and just bolting that to the miter saw. That's it.
Here's a visual of what that process looks like I just described. Basically measuring that drawer front, the drawer box height. I then am being careful to mark. I want the continuous grain pattern all across the drawer front, so I mark the top, and on the back you see I have a bunch of construction triangles just to remind me which way's up when I cut these. I rip it to height, I then do a quick confirmation. I come over and start to wrap it in the hardwood edging. Once I get a good fit with the hardwood edging, which always takes a couple cuts, I will apply glue and then pin nail it to the drawer front. Laying out the holes for the drawer pulls now. I'll use these to mount the false front to the drawer box. using some shims to get the right spacing. Have to make a couple adjustments to the drawer slides here just to make sure I have a nice fit between the drawer front and the cabinet. After that, I will measure again and just move on to the next drawer. Continue this for, 23 drawers in total. Here's some finish shots. I sanded and sprayed polyurethane on the drawer fronts. I would then permanently mount them, mount the pulls, do any final adjustments I need to the drawer slides. But here you can see the lower bank cabinets is all finished, looking really nice. One thing I wish I would have done differently here at this center bank is not use the 1/4 inch bottoms. I wish I would have used a 1/2 inch bottom here. Not that I'm worried about them failing, just would give a little bit more rigidity and a little more strength to those center drawers. But here's some more finished pictures. You can see got some nice continuous grain across those drawer fronts. Starting to fill up these cabinets and drawers. I won't make you sit through watching me sort hardware, but that took a while as well to get it all sorted into different containers and boxes. Here's the dust collection pole on the inside for the blast gate. I put that piece of wood in there just to help me find it when I'm reaching in there blind. Here's my corner with all the oversized stuff just kind of thrown in there for now. I'll have to organize that later. My screw drawer, one of my screw drawers, the one below it also has screws in it. Nice and big, plenty of space. Got some dowels and Craig stuff in this drawer, and then all the drawers getting filled up. One thing I didn't cover were the flip stops. I talked about them briefly. Here's what the finished product looked like. It's got pieces of oak with a long bolt, some nylon washers, and a lock nut. And here's one that has 2 legs, just depending on how I want to use it. I still will have to figure out how to use a measuring tape on this Craig track and how to place that. The real key to these slides here is this piece of oak that has the little ridge in it that fits in the T-track so it doesn't spin. And then one thing too, since the saw is so far away from my fence, I had to come up with this little sliding stop that I mount to the fence, and then it has a T-track embedded in it that can slide over and stop.
So I finished up the miter saw station finally. Got all the organization mostly done to where I want it. Not finished yet, but mostly done. And so I want to take some time to talk about some of the mistakes I made. So if any of you want to take on this endeavor or something similar to this, just some things to keep in mind or things that I did wrong that may help you if you want to do this. I took some notes on my phone, so let me pick this back up off the floor. And I'll look through. I made a list of my errors here. Probably the first and the biggest mistake I made was I did not have this saw in my possession when I was laying out the design in terms of the dust box, the cabinet layout, how wide everything had to be. That was my biggest mistake. Of course, I went to, in my defense, I went to Menards, took my tape measure, piece of paper, took down probably 15 dimensions of the saw in all its different configurations and whatever, just so I thought I fully understood how big of a space how big of a space it occupied. Once I finally got it in place, set it up on the cabinet, started going through all the bevels and miters, I found that I missed a couple key dimensions. One of them being the motor as it bevels to the left, and then miters either way. It has a lot of swing to it. And then as well the handle. I did measure the handle to a bevel, but I don't think I measured it to a bevel and miter. And so it goes really far back into the cabinet and ends up hitting my dust collection pipe that's running down there. That was my biggest mistake though, because that impacted everything. That would have changed the whole design of the whole cabinet. Next, not putting backs on the cabinets until I got them into place. For some reason, I thought that I was going to need to get access through the cabinet into the back wall. I really didn't, except for this center one. I had to get to the dust collection to tighten on the hose clamp to the takeoff I have on the bottom. It would have made my life a little bit easier when I went to level the cabinets, since the backs weren't on. They were a little bit flexible, and so it was making moving them around and getting them leveled up a little bit more challenging than it needed to be. So could have put the backs on out here and then slid them into place. Maybe just temporarily attach this middle one with some screws through some cleats in the rear, and then remove the screws and took the back off, whatever. That would have been easier than having me hang over the cabinets and shoot staples into the back of it to get the tops on, or to get the backs on. Not a big deal, just a little bit more work, a little bit more effort needed. The next one kind of plays into the whole not having my miter saw ahead of time. This top on the right hand side here, I wanted to extend both these sides kind of out and around the saw, so to just to maximize the material support. I forgot to do that. As I was building it, I cut the top flush with the cabinet. Same with this side, just cut the top flush with the cabinet, and then like 2 days later I was working, I was like, oh shit, I forgot to bring this out and kind of tailor it to the saw's, the swing of the saw's miter front here. Wish I would have done it, but didn't. Hasn't been a big deal so far. The saw has these little extendable supports which help the material get out there, support the material out there until it gets to the tabletop. All right, next mistake here, drawer sizing. I can't remember if I touched on this in the video beforehand. I might, but if not, my drawer heights, the actual boxes of the drawers, I made them too tall. I laid out my drawer sizes and spacing, assuming the fronts were on there, right? So leaving small 1/4 inch gaps between all the drawers. I then did subtract any height from the drawer and went and made all my drawer boxes that same size. So meaning that if I pull out this drawer, this is a 4-inch drawer. My drawer front and box are basically the same height. I think I designed in a 32nd of an inch. Yeah, about a 32nd of an inch. The front is bigger than the box by a 32nd, which reduces my drawer spacing that I wanted. And that's not a big deal. It just makes it very finicky to size and position the drawer fronts. The drawer widths, I had measured the drawer openings, cabinet openings, subtracted my 1 inch for the slides, but I was like a 16th to a 32nd off on a couple of them. Like this drawer, this cabinet here, I should have measured it in more places because the bottom was just a little bit tighter than the top. I think one bank of these needed some material removed from the drawer boxes. I was a little wide, so I had to take them over to my router table and remove some material so the slides would fit in there without being too tight and binding up. Not the end of the world, but just would have made my life a little easier if I would have measured more accurately the first time. Maybe measured 4 times, 3 or 4 times, and then measured it again, and then made sure my drawer boxes came out to the way I wanted, exactly to that size. And that 32nd really can screw with you. Next is the T-track in the fence. I don't love the way it turned out. Honestly, I'm reusing my old miter track I had, which is the Craig miter track system, which is great. It's super solid, but it has some very unique sizing characteristics to it in terms of the T slot, how far it's set back from the front. As well, the Craig system, the way that you tighten up their production stop and their swing stop is actually from the back. So you have to have access to the back to tighten it up. And for some reason, I completely blanked on that when using this fence system. That's how you had to access that. So I had to revert to making some custom ones here out of wood. Just got some oak, Teflon or nylon washers and some hardware. I had to find these little knobs to work with how tight the clearance is between the upper cabinet and the fence system. But it all worked out. I laid out the height of the fence plus the stop so I wouldn't interfere with any openings on the upper cabinet, just so if I had to get to it for some reason, I could still flip them up out of the way and not have to move them back down for any reason. Or who knows the scenario where you don't want to mess with the flip stop, but you have to get to something in the cabinet or the opening behind it. So that was my whatever fourth, fifth mistake I made on this. I think that is it for the mistakes. Maybe one last one as I'm standing here is I probably should have overhung the tops from the cabinet a little more, so I would have had an edge to clamp to. Because right now the way I designed it was that the front of the hardwood edging is basically flush with the front of the drawer fronts here, which looks nice, but in terms of functionality, maybe I should have had stick bass like a couple inches or an inch, just so I could get a small clamp in there and clamp stuff down to the top. I want to use this as a work surface, which it has been already. Stuff's been up there. I've been drilling, screwing, chiseling things actually up there. So probably should have done that. Maybe I can add some like a T-track or something like that to put some stops in there. We'll see. Okay, that's really it for the faults, the mistakes I made. I made a couple other small ones in dimension over here in this opening on the left, but probably not big enough to worry about. Some of the future upgrades, I definitely want to add something here to like hold clipboards, plans, pencils. Just this is a really good space that you're always going to be accessing, especially when you're rough cutting material, to have all the plans laying up here and just be able to just reference them as you're cross cutting everything. So I want to do that. That's probably the first thing I'll change. Organization, this is always going to evolve. Things are going to be moving from hole to hole, slot to slot, drawer to drawer. Probably to other cabinets or other cabinet stuff's going to come over here into this. That's going to be kind of an evolution as I go here, so that'll be changing. And then the last one, and this is a maybe, is my dust collection. Sorry, my heater just turned on. The dust collection, right now I have one 6-inch line coming in the bottom. This saw does come with a little dust collection, I don't know what you want to call it, a little chute here on the bottom to collect the debris. As you pull the saw out, it will still collect that debris up through this pipe here. So maybe I could do something like a 6-inch to a 6-inch with a 4-inch T or a Y in it, and I can reduce that down finally to whatever size this is, like 1.25 inches or something like that. And so then I have multiple means of dust collection, one in the cabinet itself and one moving with the saw. May help, especially as you get the saw way out. The effectiveness of the dust collection goes down because you're further away from the source and from the airflow. That pretty much does it for this setup, for the video, for my speaking here. If you have made it through all the videos and made it through this, me rambling on, I appreciate it. I'm really happy with the way the build turned out. I'm glad I took the time to add the hardwood edging, add the finish. This will hopefully last me for as long as I need to. Hopefully for 20 years or so. I don't plan on leaving this shop or this house, so hopefully this is always here and I can always use it. I'm very, very happy with the way it turned out. Once again, thanks for watching. If you made it through all of it, excellent. Everyone be safe. Have a good one.